Sawadee Kap, hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and I'm starting a 4-part series on loving kindness meditation. This is where over the next 4 classes, you're going to be able to learn loving kindness meditation. This is a meditation that's going to help you to eliminate anger, hatred, ill will, and all the lesser versions. So whether it's frustration, agitation, annoyance, or even the slightest dislike towards others, you'll actually be able to eliminate this from the mind through training the mind with meditation, but then also through the Eightfold Path, which is something I've already taught in this program, which is going to help you to transform your mind. So I'd like to welcome all of you, and at the same time invite you to join for our class where you'll be able to learn about loving kindness meditation. And by the end, we're going to actually do a loving kindness meditation together. So let me just switch over to some visual aids here so everybody online will be able to see what it is that I'm sharing. Okay. So to get us started, I would like to just kind of go back to where we've been in the past, where I've actually been sharing with you that meditation is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session to eliminate certain unwholesome qualities of the mind and to cultivate certain wholesome qualities in the mind. And we've talked about this in relationship to breathing mindfulness meditation. This is a part of the program that we've already done, and I've already done a 4-part series on this, where now we're going to be moving into loving kindness meditation. And I would like to just remind you of what you're eliminating as an unwholesome quality and what you're cultivating as wholesome qualities. So you're eliminating anger, hatred, ill will, and all the lesser versions, like frustration, agitation, annoyance, and even the slightest dislike towards others. All of this is coming from one's own mind, where oftentimes an individual think it's coming from other people, but it's actually coming from the mind itself. So you can actually eliminate this. So the meditation is going to help you to be able to accomplish that, while at the same time, it's helping to cultivate loving kindness for all beings. Loving kindness is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. This is active goodwill towards all beings without judgment, where what you would like to do is get to the point where you have unconditional love. If you're falling in love with people and out of love with people, this isn't actually love. We're going to be talking about this when we get to chapter 15 of our program. But today it's all about just focusing on helping you to understand what loving kindness meditation is and then doing a loving kindness meditation session together. So this loving kindness is active goodwill towards all beings without judgment, where oftentimes what people are taught to do is they're taught, don't respect others until they respect you. Well, if everybody was practicing this, nobody would be respecting anybody, because one person would be like, well, I'm not going to respect you until you respect me. And the other person is like, well, I'm not going to respect you until you respect me. Well, if you did this with your love and your kindness, then you're not understanding the important purpose of practicing loving kindness. By you putting out loving kindness, this is what's going to come back to you. It's going to rewire your mind to essentially be loving and kind with all beings. So if you were judging others to determine if they deserve your loving kindness, then that means you don't have loving kindness permeating in the mind, and you're still practicing conditional love, even though there's no such thing as conditional love. It's like, if you meet these conditions, then I will be loving and kind with you. But that's not how an enlightened being functions. An enlightened being is loving and kind with everybody. They might disagree with the choices and decisions that certain people make, but they can still be loving and kind with all beings. This loving kindness is the antidote or wholesome root. It's the remedy for anger, hatred, ill will, and all the lesser versions. It's going to help you to eliminate your harshness, the bitterness, hostility, and resentment from the mind. We're going to be exploring this more when we get to chapter 14, which is the Brahma Viharas, or the 4 healthy mental states, because this is an antidote to what's going to help you eliminate the symptom of all these feelings like anger, hatred, ill will, frustration, agitation, irritation, annoyance, even the slightest dislike. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't have the even slightest dislike towards other human beings or any other beings. In terms of what the Buddha has taught, in order to help you see how loving kindness plugs in to his existing teachings, because remember, the Eightfold Path is a core central teaching that everything else plugs into. So here you can remember from right intention that the Buddha teaches the intention or the thinking or thought of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. Well, this non-ill will, that is goodwill. So you need to have the intention, the thinking, or the thought of goodwill towards all beings. But how could you ever do that if you didn't have a technique or some way to cultivate that in the mind? So the Buddha taught loving kindness meditation in order to essentially fill up the mind with loving kindness, like a gas tank. And now you can go out into the world and you can be loving and kind through your intentions, speech, and actions. And then if you remember back to the 5 factors of well-spoken speech as part of right speech, is that the 5th factor is to speak with a mind of loving kindness. The Buddha taught to speak at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. You're wrapping everything that you're saying in a mind of loving kindness, which the mind has a really challenging time to do in the unenlightened state, because the mind has that bitterness and harshness and hostility. On Sunday, I taught about the 10 fetters, and we taught about sensual desire and ill will. Well, that sensual desire is the mind's craving, desire, attachment. If your cravings are getting fulfilled, then you're going to get pleasant feelings. But if the cravings aren't getting fulfilled, you get those painful feelings. And one of the things that can happen is this ill will can arise. And now it comes out through your intention, speech, and actions. But you're going to need to transform this and essentially rewire the mind where it can be loving and kind towards all beings. So in order to have loving kindness in your speech, it needs to emanate from your intentions. And now the way that you accomplish that is by practicing loving kindness meditation. And now by getting that into the mind where you have more loving kindness, your intentions, speech, and actions can be more loving and kind. We might even look at the right action as part of the Eightfold Path and see where eliminating killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct is also a practice of loving kindness. Loving kindness for ourselves, but loving kindness for others as well. Here's another part where the Buddha was teaching about loving kindness. Prior to this, he was reminding his students that while he teaches them to speak with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, not everybody's going to speak to you in that way. So he taught his students to speak at the proper time. What you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. But there's going to be people in your life, even when you're enlightened, there's going to be an occasional person that speaks in an untimely way, that speaks falsehoods, that speaks harsh, that speaks unbeneficially, and speaks with a mind of inner hate. And when somebody's speaking that way, this is the Buddha's guidance. He says, "Herein, monks, you should train thus. Our minds will remain unaffected, and we shall utter no evil words. We shall reside compassionate for their welfare, with a mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. We shall reside enveloping that person with a mind filled with loving kindness, and starting with him, we shall reside enveloping the all-encompassing world with a mind filled with loving kindness, abundant, joyful, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. That is how you should train, monks." So the Buddha is teaching you that even though other people are maybe being disgruntled and frustrated and angry, it's important that you maintain your compassion, that you maintain your loving kindness. Compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. You can have concern for that person. Realize they don't even realize the harm that they're causing in the world by being so bitter and harsh and hostile. And you can reside with your mind having loving kindness towards them. Oftentimes people in the unenlightened state will have bitterness and harshness. They'll have resentment. They'll have grudges towards others. And the mind thinks that they're getting back at the other person, that if they hold on to this resentment and this grudge, it's somehow getting back at the other person. But that's like holding on to a hot coal and trying to burn somebody else. The only person getting burned is yourself. So the Buddha is teaching you how to get liberated from this anger, hatred, and ill will, how to get it out of your mind. And it's loving kindness meditation that's going to help you to do that. So some more words from the Buddha so that you can have confidence that he indeed taught loving kindness meditation, and it does indeed eliminate anger, hatred, and ill will, is these are some more words from him where he was teaching. This first one is he's teaching his son Rahula. Sometimes people think that the Buddha left his family and he never came back. This isn't actually true. He went back towards his family and they joined him, his wife, his son, his stepmother, which was his aunt, the woman who adopted him after his mother died, his cousins and brother-in-laws. Many people were coming to learn with him. So here he's teaching his son Rahula. He says, "Rahula, develop meditation on loving kindness. For when you develop meditation on loving kindness, any ill will be abandoned. This is clear, concise, and precise. You don't have to interpret the words of a fully, perfectly enlightened Buddha. They will teach you very clear, very concise, and very precise. So there's no interpretation here. It's very clear. The Buddha is saying, practice loving kindness meditation, because when you develop meditation on loving kindness, any ill will be abandoned. It will be eliminated from the mind. Anger, hatred, ill will, and all those lesser versions. Then, as you're practicing loving kindness meditation, you can't just stop there. You can't meditate your way to the end of anger, hatred, and ill will. That's not possible. You're using the meditation to essentially fill up your gas tank, but then you need to go out into the world and practice being loving and kind through your intention, speech, and actions. That's this next piece. He says loving kindness should be developed to abandon ill will. Again, very clear, very concise, very precise. You don't need to interpret that whatsoever. And now here's something else from the Buddha. Prior to this, he was talking to his students and he was helping them to understand certain things about his teachings. But just to kind of set this up a little bit for you, the reason why he's teaching this is that you might think that during the lifetime of a Buddha that he was the only one teaching. Because if a Buddha lived during your lifetime, you'd probably like to learn from that individual. So not everybody during the Buddha's lifetime knew that he was actually a Buddha. There were some people that didn't understand what a Buddha was and that he was actually a Buddha. So he was teaching and his students were getting to enlightenment, and his students could see that they were getting to enlightenment. But there was other teachers who were teaching and claiming that it was their teachings that led to enlightenment. And there were various students that were learning with those teachers. But those students and the students of the Buddha would sometimes get together and they would sometimes eat or talk or have conversation, and they would talk about what is it that your teacher is teaching you and what is it that your teacher is teaching you, and they would discuss these things. So the Buddha is talking to his students and saying, suppose they ask, meaning those students from other people, but what, friends, is the reason unarisen anger does not arise and arisen anger is abandoned? You should answer, the liberation of mind by loving kindness. For one who attends carefully to the liberation of the mind by loving kindness, unarisen anger does not arise, and arisen anger is abandoned. This, friends, is the reason unarisen anger does not arise, and arisen anger is abandoned. So again, very clear and concise. What he's talking about is any arisen anger that is in your mind. If you bring in loving kindness, it will eliminate that anger. But also there's unarisen anger. What unarisen anger is that mental object of ill will that's deeply rooted in the mind. And right now, maybe when you're listening to me, there's no anger in your mind, but there's this deeply rooted container that if one of your cravings, desires, attachments get triggered, then you're going to experience this anger coming up in the mind. So this unarisen anger, this deeply rooted container in your mind needs to be eliminated. It needs to be purified so that that's out of your mind, so that you get to the point where it's physically impossible for your mind to experience anger. That's what you'll experience by the time you get to enlightenment. And it's loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness in day-to-day life that's going to get you there. Because anytime you're experiencing anger, the longer you allow it to sit in the mind, your mind just stays wired that way. You would like to get rid of this anger out of the mind as soon as possible. So if you're noticing anger arising as a bodily sensation, like I was teaching a couple of Sundays ago, you'd like to cut it off as a bodily sensation. But if you miss it as a bodily sensation and it comes into the mind and it actually forms a feeling, you would like to cut it off there. But if you don't cut it off there as a feeling, then it's going to affect the condition of the mind for a few minutes, a few hours, a few days. And when you notice it, you'd like to bring in the loving kindness. That's what's actually going to rewire your mind to eliminate this anger, because you're not interested in allowing the mind to dwell in that anger, hatred, and ill will, or any of those lesser versions, because the mind just stays wired that way. So I'm going to pause here before I teach you guys loving kindness meditation and see if you guys have any questions on what I've been sharing so far about what loving kindness is, that the Buddha taught loving kindness in his words here to help you see that it's important to eliminate anger, hatred, and ill will. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any and all questions that you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions on any of our platforms anywhere. So what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to move forward with teaching you loving kindness meditation. The way we do this is if you've already learned breathing mindfulness meditation with me, then you know that we start with chanting. That's not a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer. It's just helping to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. Then there's going to be some guidance for breathing mindfulness meditation, where I'm essentially guiding you in that session just to get you started. But then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're all meditating together with breathing mindfulness meditation. Then I'm going to come back in with the loving kindness meditation. Here, I'm going to be essentially sharing these phrases where I'm going to say things like, may I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness in the suffering it causes. When you hear me say that, you would like to repeat that in your mind on the out breath. And then I'm going to end up going one by one, just very slowly. You're going to hear me saying these affirmations. For today's class, I'm just going to do what we actually have on the screen here, which is may I, may we, may all beings. But what you would like to do is you would like to customize this meditation. If there's individuals who you have in your life that you currently have anger and hatred for, you're going to need to include them into your meditation. Even if they're long in your past and you're never going to even see them again, maybe they're even dead. If your mind's holding on to anger and hatred for any being whatsoever, it's going to hinder you from experiencing enlightenment. So I'm going to go through each of these in the way that you see it on the visual aid. And then in future classes, I'm going to modify this, but I'm just doing this to help you learn the structure. But keep in mind that you're going to need to customize this because this is very general and very broad. May I, meaning this being who you are, because you need to have loving kindness for this being. May we, meaning those of us that are meditating together. And then all beings, meaning all beings in the world. But actually, when you do this yourself, you would like to do maybe 6 or 8 different rings, where maybe you do 1 or 2 rings of people that you actually have loving kindness for, so that you can bubble that up. Then maybe some people that you're more neutral about. You don't exactly hate them, but you don't really love them either. You're just kind of like, more neutral. Maybe some coworkers or a neighbor or something like this. Maybe do a ring or 2 of those types of individuals. And then do a ring or 2 of individuals that you do have anger and hatred towards. Maybe it's a member of your family, or maybe it's an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend or something like this, or an ex-boss. And then ultimately, you're going to need to go to all beings. And that's what you would like to be doing on your own between now and the next class. So you'll learn this structure with this one. After we do these affirmations, we will go back to breathing mindfulness meditation and then back to the chanting. The way that I think about this is like a loving kindness sandwich. You've got loving kindness in the middle, then you've got breathing mindfulness meditation just outside of that, which is like the lettuce and tomato. Then the bread, holding it all together, that's the chanting. So this is our structure that we're going to be using. And over the next several classes, because each Wednesday I'm going to be doing another part of the series, I'm going to be modifying this so that you guys can see some different options that you can use. But you can actually be working with this on your own between now and the next class. So let me just pause again and see if you have any questions before we go into the loving kindness meditation. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. All right, so if you guys would like to take a meditation position, we usually do this one in either the seated, lying, or standing positions. There is a walking position for meditation, but you don't typically do the loving kindness meditation in that position. So you can take any of those positions, make the body comfortable. And if you'd like to join along in the chanting, you're more than welcome to. Then I'm going to come back in with the guidance throughout the meditation. And then we'll ultimately end with some more chanting. สัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมรัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมรัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมรัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Then I'll be back with more guidance on loving kindness meditation. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Repeat these phrases in the mind on the out breath. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. May we be peaceful. May we be safe. May we be well. May we be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be safe. May all beings be well. May all beings be free of discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. Now return back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava ตังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามานุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. All right, I'm going to just share a few things with you guys just to kind of wrap up some things that we've been talking about here related to the loving kindness meditation. And then I'm going to open up for any questions that you guys might have just to kind of finish off our class. So the first thing is, remember, you're going to need to customize this meditation for you. You're going to need to include people like your mom and dad, your brothers and sisters, life partner, your children, your boss, coworkers, people like this. And you can actually use their name. So it'll be like, may Barbara be peaceful, safe, well, and free of discontentedness. Or if you have multiple children, you can say, may my children. Or if it's two children, you can say, may Bobby and Susie be peaceful, right? And safe and well and free of discontentedness and so forth. So what you're doing here is customizing this meditation for your specific life. This is where your mindfulness comes in. You need to be aware of who are the people you currently have loving kindness for, who are the people you're more neutral about, and who are the people that you actually have irritation, frustration, maybe even anger and hatred towards. You're going to need to include them in your meditation. Second, it's important to understand that when you're including these people in your meditation, you aren't trying to change them through your meditation. You aren't sending them loving kindness and trying to get somebody to change them to be loving and kind or peaceful and well and safe. That's not what this is. This isn't a prayer. You're not invoking some kind of special power to change mom and dad or to change your life partner. What this is doing is rewiring your mind to be more loving and kind so that when you interact with these individuals, you can be more loving and kind. All too often, when people are having difficulties and struggles in their relationships, they think the way to solve this is to change the other person. That's not what's going to improve your relationships. You actually need to improve your mind in the way that your mind functions. And then by you interacting with that person in a more loving and kind way, that's what's actually going to transform your relationships. You actually can't change other people. It's up to each individual person to choose to change for themselves. But you can change your mind. So if you change your mind to be more loving and kind, as you're putting that out, more and more, that's what will come back to you. So you're going to need to customize this for your specific needs And keep in mind that you're not sending loving kindness. You're not trying to change those people. You're changing your mind so that when you spend time around these people, you can be more loving and kind. And then the third thing is that this would be a great meditation to do in the morning before you head out in your day. That doesn't mean you couldn't do it in the afternoon or the evening, because if you're building up to 2 or 3 meditations per day, you would like to have at least one of them be loving kindness. And if you do it in the morning, this is great because then you go out in your day with a mind full of loving kindness. But if you're dealing with a lot of anger and bitterness and hostility, you could do this 3 times a day if you'd like, because you're doing a little bit of breathing mindfulness meditation as part of this. So if you're only going to do it once a day, which is ideal to do it at least once a day, the morning is an ideal place to do that. But let's just say you get a phone call at 2 p.m., 4 p.m., and you're noticing all this anger coming up, and you get off the phone and you're dealing with all this anger. You could do a loving kindness meditation, and this is going to knock it down. Because remember, you're not interested in the mind dwelling in that anger and frustration. So the loving kindness meditation will help you to be able to eliminate that. So this is loving kindness meditation. This is part 1 of our 4-part series. Next week, I'm going to be customizing this and doing a little bit different style. It's going to be the same structure and all the things that I taught you today, but I'm going to customize those rings so you can see some other options. But between now and then, you can actually be practicing this. And also, if you're taking the group learning program, where each Sunday I'm now going to be going chapter by chapter in this book. So this Sunday, I'm going to be doing chapter 1. So you could easily be reading this book this week as well, because chapter 1 in the preface probably will take you about 30 minutes to read it. And you can read that maybe over 1 or 2 sittings. You can just kind of sit down and read that so that you're prepared for the class on Sunday. So let me know what questions you guys have on anything that I've shared so far. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, looks like Mayu Lee has a question here in Facebook. Teacher, when we have oneness of mind, we are able to notice the entire mind at all times, and there's no subconscious mind, and we are in control of the entire mind. Is that correct? You will have full awareness of the mind, but you won't be in complete control of the mind when you get to oneness of mind. Oneness of mind is where there's no longer a subconscious mind. That happens in the 2nd jhana, but you're not actually having full control over your mind at that point. You won't have full control over your mind until the mind's actually enlightened in the 4th stage of enlightenment. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. Okay, so I'm just going to end class by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn and grow and develop on the path. As you'd like to learn more, there's plenty of opportunities for that. As you heard me share on Sunday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., I'm going to be in chapter 1 of this book, which is titled Universal Teachings. This is where you're learning about universal love for all beings, do no harm, and be a good moral person. This is going to help you to see the connections between Buddhism, Christianity, Muslim teachings, Hinduism, and all these other things. Because if you've been learning these things prior in your life, these can actually help you as you're moving into Buddhist teachings. So I'm going to help you to see these universal teachings, which kind of connects all of these things together. But of course, the Buddhist teachings are standalone as their own because they really help you to focus on training the mind and getting to that peace and joy in this life. And they're not based in any belief or anything like that. It's not about an afterlife or rituals and ceremonies or belief. It's about training your mind in this life. But there are some connections between these other teachings. So I'll help you guys to understand what those are, and I'll help you to understand why you're seeing those things as well. And then next week on Wednesday, I'm going to be in part 2 of this particular series, where I'm going to be doing a second part of loving kindness meditation, helping you guys to be able to see some different varieties of how to actually meditate with loving kindness meditation. So take care, be well, and whatever you choose to do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee ka. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.